all civilians from Gaza City by 7 October 2025, affecting some 800,000 people, many of them previously displaced. Reports indicate that the IDF would then surround the city for 3 months. This would then reportedly be followed by an additional 2 months to seize control of central Gaza's camps and clear the entire area of Palestinian armed groups. Mr. President, we are already witnessing a humanitarian catastrophe of unimaginable scale in Gaza. Director Ramesh Rajasingham from OCHA will shortly provide you with the latest updates in this regard. If these plans are implemented, they will likely trigger another calamity in Gaza, reverberating across the region and causing further forced displacements, killings and destruction, compounding the unbearable suffering of the population. Last night, thousands of protesters gathered in Tel Aviv and cities across Israel to call for a ceasefire and hostage release deal. The UN has been unequivocal. The only way to stop the immense human suffering in Gaza is through a full, immediate, and permanent ceasefire. All hostages must be released immediately and unconditionally. Israel must comply with its obligations under international humanitarian law, allowing rapid, safe, unimpeded, and large-scale delivery of humanitarian aid to the population. Civilians, including humanitarian workers and those seeking aid, must be protected. Everyone has the right to life, liberty, and security. Palestinians must be able to return to their homes. In its 19 July 2024 advisory opinion, the International Court of Justice stated that, and I quote, Israel, as the occupying power, has the obligation not to impede the Palestinian people from exercising its right to self-determination, including its right to an independent and sovereign state over the entirety of the occupied Palestinian territory. End of quote. Mr. President, as I emphasized to this Council a few days ago, there is no military solution to the armed conflict in Gaza or the broader Israeli-Palestinian conflict. There will be no sustainable solution without an end to Israel's unlawful occupation and the achievement of a viable two-state solution. Gaza is and must remain an integral part of a Palestinian state. We must plan for Gaza's future as we address the urgency of developments on the ground today. We must establish political and security frameworks that can relieve the humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza, start early recovery and reconstruction, address the legitimate security concerns of Israelis and Palestinians, and forge a path for the realization of a viable two-state solution. In this regard, I urge the immediate implementation of the political, humanitarian, and security steps outlined in the New York Declaration on the peaceful settlement of the question of Palestine and the implementation of the two-state solution of 29 July 2025. Critically, these frameworks must facilitate a legitimate Palestinian government that can reunify Gaza and the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, politically, economically, and administratively. This government must represent Palestinians across the entirety of the occupied Palestinian territory. A united leadership is crucial to managing post-conflict Gaza and advancing Palestinian self-determination and sovereignty. I urge the Palestinian Authority to advance its stated goal of holding elections. Palestinians have the right to have their voices heard and to be meaningfully included in the process of shaping the future of the State of Palestine. Our ultimate goal remains unchanged: Israel and a fully independent, democratic, contiguous, viable and sovereign Palestinian state, of which Gaza is an integral part, living side by side in peace and security within secure and recognized borders on the basis of the pre-1967 lines, with Jerusalem as the capital of both states. I thank you.
Agradezco.
I thank Mr. Yancha for his briefing. I now give the floor to Mr. Ramesh Rajasingham.
Thank you, Mr. President. The suffering endured in Gaza over the past 22 months has been nothing short of soul-searing. Our shared humanity demands that this unacceptable catastrophe is brought to an immediate end. Mr. President, I will address three matters today. First, I'm extremely concerned over the prolonged conflict, the reports of atrocities and further human toll that is likely to unfold following the government of Israel's decision to expand military operations in Gaza. This marks a grave escalation in the conflict that has already inflicted unimaginable suffering. Now, for over 670 days, Palestinians in Gaza have endured daily killings and injuries. More than 61,000 people have been killed, including at least 18,000 children, and 151,000 have been injured, according to Gaza's Ministry of Health. Meanwhile, 50 hostages are believed to remain in Gaza, with those still alive held in inhumane and appalling conditions. Thousands of Palestinians, including women and children, remain in Israeli detention, many held without charge or trial, all the required safeguards. A grim milestone has also been crossed in our sector, the humanitarian community. Over 500 humanitarian workers have been killed in Gaza since hostilities escalated, including at least 167 women. Smear campaigns against aid operations continue unabated. And as we approach World Humanitarian Day, we must insist on the protection of all aid workers. Mr. President, second, humanitarian conditions are beyond horrific. We have frankly run out of words to describe it. Whatever lifelines remain are collapsing under the weight of sustained hostilities, forced displacement, and insufficient levels of life-saving aid. Hunger-related deaths are rising, especially among children, with severe malnutrition. Since the escalation of hostilities in October 2023, the health authorities in Gaza have documented the deaths of 98 children from severe acute malnutrition, 37 alone since the 1st of July, just over a month ago. This is no longer a looming hunger crisis. This is starvation, pure and simple. Each day brings harrowing images of women, men, and children killed and injured while desperately seeking assistance. The situation is untenable, especially for older people, people with disabilities, and children without parental care, and widowed women. Gaza lies in ruins. Almost everyone in Gaza has been forcibly displaced at some point over the past 2 years, and at least once. Palestinians in Gaza have been forced into an area that amounts to less than 14% of the territory, in areas that are not safe and are lacking basic services or shelter. Further, expansion of military operations will make these conditions even worse. Families in Gaza living in insecure and overcrowded conditions, many without shelter. 11% of some 6,500 households surveyed recently by humanitarian partners were reported to be living out in the open. No organization, UN or otherwise, has been able to bring shelter supplies into Gaza since the 2nd of March. The lack of adequate shelter is particularly worrisome, as we know that winter will soon be upon us. Given the scale of repeated displacement and current living conditions, preventing the entry of emergency shelter supplies defies the obligation to allow humanitarian relief for the population in need. The humanitarian system is effectively collapsed, hospitals are not protected, doctors have been killed or detained, and facilities are working without sufficient medical supplies. Water and sanitation infrastructure, already at a critical failing point before the crisis, are now almost completely failing, and social cohesion is unraveling. So how are the people in Gaza expected to survive in these conditions? Mr. President, my third point, the recent military tactical pauses have enabled some positive changes in humanitarian operations. Limited amounts of fuel have been allowed in, and on 5 August, Israeli authorities approved a mechanism for the gradual resumption of controlled commercial goods into Gaza. This has resulted in different types of food returning to markets and a slight decrease in some prices. Our teams on the ground caution us that despite these developments, meaningful change for the population remains elusive, as humanitarian conditions remain largely unchanged. Security conditions have remained volatile, fighting has continued, crossing arrangements have remained inadequate. Humanitarian missions, though less frequently denied outright, can still take over 18 hours, with teams stranded on dangerous roads. Extreme desperation is driving people to take the humanitarian aid in transit, but this need not be the case. We've seen that when assistance is rapidly and significantly scaled up, incidents of looting and insecurity decline, and trust begins to be rebuilt. The United Nations has the plan and the systems in place to respond. We've said this before, and we will say it again and again. Let us work. To assist all those in need at scale, we must have predictable access, and the movement of life-saving goods must be more effectively facilitated. It is equally critical that all humanitarian partners on the ground, including international humanitarian organizations, are allowed to deliver life-saving services. Registration processes for non-governmental organizations that the government of Israel introduced earlier this year are concerning and risk further undermining operational capacity and continuity. Mr. President, echoing the Secretary General, I remain deeply concerned about the ripple effects of the expansion of Gaza military operations on the West Bank, where military operations, settler violence, and home demolitions persist at unprecedented and alarming rates. A year ago, the International Court of Justice determined that Israel must bring its unlawful presence, policies, and practices to an end as rapidly as possible. Developments in the West Bank worsen and an existing humanitarian situation that sadly remains less visible, but not because it is less severe, but because the global attention has been drawn elsewhere. Mr. President, Security Council members, and indeed the international community listening, states and all those with any influence must look within our bruised collective conscience and summon the courage to do so, to do what is necessary to end this inhumanity and pain. It is also what international law demands. Civilians must be protected, and their essential needs must be met, and hostages must be released unconditionally. Arbitrarily detained Palestinians must be freed. Israel must agree to and facilitate humanitarian relief operations, both into and within the Gaza Strip, to reach the population in need. The International Court of Justice's provisional measures in the case on the application of the Genocide Convention in Gaza remain in place, including the demand that Israel take immediate and effective measures to enable the provision of urgently needed basic services and humanitarian assistance. Life and dignity should be respected for all. International humanitarian law serves as a compass for the conduct in war and is designed to ensure a minimum of humanity. The parties in all states must honor their commitment to this. The suffering must stop. Mr. President, thank you.
I thank Mr. Rajasingham for the information provided. I will now give the floor to the council members who would like to.
All right, we're going to come out of that. Those were live visuals straight from the United Nations Security Council, where they were just deliberating the proposed expansion of Israel's military offensive and takeover of Gaza City. The Deputy SG calling for an immediate as well as permanent ceasefire as the only viable solution to bring about peace in the Middle East, also calling on Israel to abide by international law and to allow for humanitarian aid and relief efforts to continue unhindered, and also say the two-state solution is the only diplomatic way to resolve the current impasse. The emphasis on the continuous hunger situation unfolding in Gaza was also condemned, and that women and children have been displaced without shelter. Doctors there have been killed, and some facilities are even working without sufficient medical supplies is a daily concern, saying that further expansion of Israeli military operation in Gaza will further exacerbate the current situation.